All right, I am so excited to have my guest Meredith Blaze on today. Today's episode I'm going to call "Woulda, Shoulda, Coulda." Woulda, coulda, shoulda. Like, what are the things that we wish we would have known, should have done? All the kind of things like that feeling of like woulda, shoulda, coulda. And so Meredith, I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and we're going to kind of go from there. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay, so, Meredith, will you let everyone know how many kiddos you have and kind of your college thing, like
Okay.
your empty nest journey a little bit?
Okay. So I have three children. Will, Sarah, Abby. Will went to college in 2015, and then the very next year I sent Sarah to college, and about 4 years later sent Abby to college. Now, at the time we lived in Colorado, and all three of our children chose to go out of state, all over 1,000 plus miles away. And yeah, so I have a little experience
So
with
crazy.
sending to college far away and transition.
Uh, I remember that when you were sending Will away, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's going to be so far away from me. And it was like, I mean, it happened for me like just a couple years later. It happened so fast.
Right,
And I
right.
remember you were kind of planning like when you were sending Will off, and he was so far away. He lived in Colorado. You were sending him to school in Arkansas.
Mhm.
And back then, Amazon wasn't quite what it was. And
Right,
so you learned a ton of like what to do, what not to do. And also he didn't have a car. So
right.
that was something interesting. Sarah went from Colorado to Pepperdine and Malibu, and then Abby went to Seattle. So totally different situations, right? Each child had a
Exactly.
totally different situation. So and then
Hmm.
for those listening, my kids, I have two kids. I sent one to Baylor, 2 hours away, in 2018. And then I sent the next one in 2020 all the way to Auburn, Alabama, 11 hours away. So the crazy part about between the five of us and all of our kids is that each one went to a different college, different situation. And we had two that went to college during COVID. So that was
Mm.
kind of a whole nother level of crazy for sure. So, first question I want to ask you is, what do you wish someone would have told you? What is something that you're like, gosh, I wish someone would have told me this?
um, I think one of the things that I wish I had understood is like your role as a mom changes. Like you're still a mom, right? You will always be their mom, but your role changes. Like you go from having like a front row seat in their everyday life to days upon days where you don't know what's going on with them. Like what's happening, what they have for breakfast, like are they eating enough? You don't know. You lose that front row seat. And so your role is still their mom, and they'll still call you when they need things, but just the everydayness of momming, I guess that's a way to say it. Just everyday involvement in their life looks so different. And yeah, that's kind of a big adjustment. So
I totally agree. I remember the first
mhm,
time when, Jake, we kind of got spoiled having Will, 2 hours away. I mean, let's be real. I mean, like when they go two
right.
hours away, like you have nothing to complain about. You can go take them to lunch and come back in the same day. Not a big deal. When your kid during COVID goes states away, like Abby and Jake did, it's a totally different scenario. I'll never forget we had Life 360. If you don't have Life 360, maybe don't get it now because it might stress you out. But Life 360 is an app where you can kind of track where your kids are, they can track where you are. Okay, so one of the things that was so crazy is that so one night he had like this Life 360, and he had it was like kind of maybe 12 o'clock at night. And for some reason, I woke up and I looked at Life 360. Never do that. Never look at Life 360 at 12:30 in the morning because
Mhm.
he was like, it looked like he was in a like a field in the middle of nowhere. Okay. So I don't want to freak him out because I don't want to be like that mom. It's like, and I don't really want him to know that I'm hovering, right? but I am. And so I'm like, so I kind of calmly try to pray myself to sleep. The next day, I'm like, so what did you do last night? And he's like, oh, we went to a couch burning in a field. I was like, okay, I guess that's what they do in Alabama. They go to couch burnings in Alabama. And so I thought that was so funny. And I was like, I could have freaked out and called 911, but thankfully, as you have learned as we parent, you have to kind of learn to kind of chill a little bit.
Is there something you wish someone would have told you?
Someone would have told me, I wish someone would have, I think the same, like I think
Mm,
I wish someone would have told me that the house is going to feel really quiet. Even when I
right.
first went away, the house, the dynamics changed so much. And
Hmm.
so I wish I would have gone on my family trips. Like, I wish we would have done like more things because like, I mean, there's so many things I wish people would tell me. I mean, that could be a whole podcast. Like, you know,
Right.
all the things I wish someone would have told me. But really, I think for me though, what I wish someone would have told me is just that it was going to be so quiet, and
Hmm.
that was kind of like shocking. But also just like, they were so busy with sports in the summer and all the things. And so I was like, oh, we can't go on trips or we can't do whatever. And then you think, but that's like the only time you ever, ever, ever will be able to do those things. Like there's not a
Hmm.
time where it gets easier, where you get
Right.
to go on vacations together. And
It actually, for us, got harder because we went from having, three kids in the same school district to, at one point, two kids in college, one in high school, and three different spring breaks, three different Christmas holidays. Like there was overlap, but any kind of travel or coordination got really hard.
yeah. And it doesn't get any better once they get into like out of like because when they have a
Right,
job and stuff like that, like then you have to coordinate. They have like limited vacation time. They have,
right,
there's just so much less that you can do at that point.
exactly.
So
Hmm.
it never, I just feel like it never has gotten easier, you know?
Right.
Um, okay, here's a question.
Hmm.
What do you wish you would have stressed less about? A lot of moms I'm friends with have kids that are um like gonna be seniors. I have a ton of friends that have kids that are about to be seniors and they're stressed to the max about what college they're gonna get into, what like all the things like senior year, like all the things. What would you wish you would have been less stressed about?
Okay. So I think I probably just would have stressed less about grades. By the time they're a senior, they've done the work. They it is what it is, right? Like they junior year matters, and I'm not saying that they should blow off senior year, but just feeling like that's this all important thing. Okay, so I have a question for you. What is one thing that you wish you would have stressed less about when your kids were preparing for college, like their senior year of high school? What's something that you felt
Yeah.
was not worth the stress?
I think I would have stressed less about them getting into college because they're
Hmm.
going to get in somewhere and it's all
Right.
going to work out, right? And so for my kids, um, it was stressed about like where they were going to get in. So, and I don't know if your kids were as stressed about that, but or you were as stressed or your kids, but um, I was so stressed that they wouldn't get in. And actually, my second son didn't get into the college of his choice. And
Right.
it ended up being the biggest blessing ever. Like he has thrived so much at the university he's at. I feel like way more than the university that he didn't get into, that he had always wanted to go to. I mean, like he
Hmm.
had every outfit he owned practically had their letters in there, on them.
Hmm.
His room was decorated that way. Like that was where he was going to go. And when he didn't get in, it was like, oh my gosh, like the world is going to end. But actually, it ended up being a bigger blessing than ever. What were you surprised about when your first kid went off to college? Like, what is something that you were like, hmm,
I think I was surprised that I wasn't more sad. Like, of course, it's
hmm,
a shift in your family dynamic. And of course, you're sad. And, there's an empty chair at dinner and you walk by the empty bedroom. But I still had two kids at home and they needed me and life just kept happening. And like I said, one of them was a senior in high school. They were just back to back in school. And so everything I had done the previous year with my son, we were now doing with my daughter. And so it's a lot. I mean, it's just a roller coaster, but of busy and of emotion. But I don't know if it wasn't that I just didn't have time to process it, or
Mm,
I don't know, or just sometimes you build up the big moments and then you reach them and you're like, oh, okay, I made it. So, of course, were sad and we missed him, but it wasn't this devastating thing like you anticipate, maybe.
right. I think for me, it was just quiet. Like I said before, I was
Yes.
like, it was just like a
Mm-hmm.
lot more quiet. And I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
but then we
Mm-hmm.
just like started smothering Jake. Like I felt so bad for the
Right.
younger one because we
Right.
just like, it was like all eyes attention. And he was so gracious because he knew we were like
Mm-hmm.
really struggling, but he was so good and gracious to not like be like, oh, I'm driving me crazy. Because I know we absolutely were.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what
Mm-hmm.
was the most surprising thing about when your first kid, when with an empty nester transition, like going from at least having Abby at home to like empty nester?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's where the quiet kicked in for us, just having like this time, like, okay, dinner, it's just us. What do we do?
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
what it was just surprising how quiet and empty your house feels, because
Mm.
to go from, like, she probably, like Jake, got a lot of attention that year, and then all of a sudden, I mean, your school calendar, it's gone. Like, emails from your school district, your inbox is empty, and your house is too. So, I think just just the extra time and space is the weirdest transition, and weirdest. It's a little
Mm.
bit just catches you off guard sometimes.
It
Like,
does.
it's just us, and it's when you're really grateful that you like your spouse.
Okay, let's talk about that. I mean, that's kind of a hard transition,
Mm-hmm.
relationship. I think probably, I mean, and I think you would agree, like probably our hardest relationship years have been
Mm-hmm.
the empty nester stage. Is that what you would
Yeah.
say?
I would say that for us, just especially in light of aging parents, and we've shifted from caring for kids to needing to give our parents a little more care, and so that's good, and we're grateful that we are available to do that. But it's also challenging,
Hmm.
just to be that's they call it the sandwich generation, where you're still caring for your kids but you're also caring for your adult parents. So yeah, that's been challenging. And for us, it was, we moved to a different state. We uprooted our lives from the community we had been a part of for almost 20 years. So we've had challenges for sure,
Yeah,
but we're committed to each other and to figuring it out, and just staying faithful to one another and our kids. And it's hard some days, but it's also good. Like, there's more space to date or to get away and do things together that you didn't have the time or space to do when your kids
that's
were at
so
home.
true. Yeah, that's so,
Mm-hmm.
so true. Yeah, I've definitely felt that too. And being like, okay, we gotta work on each other, work on our relationship. And
Right.
my husband's like, what's for dinner? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm done. Like, the kitchen's closed.
I
If
know.
you want dinner, make your own dinner. I mean, it's like we've had to
You know,
like our roles, kind of figuring out our roles
right.
post kids, right?
That's kind of funny that you talk about that, because when we were coming home to our very empty nest for the first time, we had a conversation in the car about, okay, can we like make a plan? Like, maybe you cook a couple nights a week and I'll cook a couple nights a week, and then we can just not cook or go out or whatever. But we had a strategy, because that really does shift. Like, you don't need to make a meal every single night any longer.
Oh, we ate out so much that
Right.
first year and gained weight. Like I feel like we gained like
Mm-hmm.
that newlywed weight, we gained like post kids, right? Because we just ate out all
Yes.
the time. We were like, oh, we can go
It's
do,
so
we
much
can go,
easier.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't want to cook because it's just the two of you, and way
Right.
less, protein was purchased at our house because we didn't have boys at our house. That was like
Right.
way, our grocery bill was way less. In the woulda, coulda, shoulda theme,
Mm-hmm.
what do you wish you would have taught them when that ended up being a struggle? Like, what is something that may have been a struggle that you were kind of surprised about, But it ended up being a struggle, and you were like, huh, I wish I would have taught them this.
Mm-hmm. I think too, one of the things would just be to teach them to ask for what they need. Not in terms of like, I need money or I need new shoes, things like that, but just to know, just the self awareness piece. Like, I'm struggling with sadness or homesickness, or and for my son in particular, the first year he was away at school, he didn't have a car, and there were a couple of situations. I mean, it was really just a handful, but a couple where he really needed to have transportation. And so we had some real honest conversation with him after, it was probably spring break of that freshman year, about returning for sophomore year. And he kind of came to us with a list and said, I want to come back, but here's what I need. And a car would definitely make things easier. And we were so happy to make that happen. We just didn't think it was necessary that first year, but to just realize, and he said, I need to be able to come home more. And he
Mm,
was far away, but he was able to realize that to go from August to Thanksgiving was too long. He needed to come home.
yeah,
And so, I thought, I was proud of him. I thought that was a really mature thing to recognize and realize. And he didn't have to negotiate or bargain with us. He presented it sort of like that, but we
right.
just were happy to meet that need. We just needed to hear him express it.
That welfare check. I think for our youngest,
Mm-hmm.
he, was like, we were like, hey, if you're struggling with something and you need to go to counseling or whatever, there's no shame in that. Like, we will pay for
Mm-hmm.
that. We will,
Right.
that mental health, like making that like okay, like you're gonna be lonely, you're gonna be missing home, you're gonna be,
Right.
whatever. So for us, I think the things that I don't feel like I taught them. I mean, I definitely prepared them like you're going to be lonely. There's going to be days it's not
Right.
going to be really fun because I experienced that. And so I wanted them, and it was kind of surprising to me in college that
Mm-hmm.
I felt that way. So I wanted to say, hey, some days you're just going to be sad, miss home, not really like
Right.
it, whatever. But I think the friendship piece was actually
Mm-hmm.
harder for both boys than I thought it would be. And I wish I would have prepared them for that. Like, hey, it's going to take you a while to make friends, and it's going to take a lot longer than you thought, like to invest in friendships,
Mm-hmm.
because friendships, like just acquaintances, you have to spend about 50 hours together. Closer friends, it's about 100
Mm-hmm.
hours. And then besties, you have to spend 200 hours together in order to develop a
Mm-hmm.
bestie. That's a lot of time.
It's a
And
lot. Yeah.
so you have to really develop those friendships. That's also why a lot of people develop their closest friends in college, is because they have the time, right? When you're a mom, you
Right.
don't have the
Mm-hmm.
time to invest 200 hours
Right.
with someone, really. So,
Right.
so that was kind of like friendships, that was a big one. The people who are listening to this podcast, they received a college packing list that you and I created. Mostly you created because you're the
Mm-hmm.
organized one. But what are some tips that you would love to share about packing of your kids? Because they're maybe buying stuff, getting stuff ready to send off to their kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are some things that might be helpful?
Um, I think that that list is a great starting point. You do not need every single thing on that list, and that will differ for boys and for girls for sure. But I think that when you are packing, you need to put a toolkit in there. When you get to your kids' dorm room and you have to start assembling things, you're going to need a set of tools, screwdriver, whatever. Make sure you have that. That's one tip. You and I both love those blue IKEA zipper bags.
Yes.
They don't even have to be from IKEA. You can buy them on Amazon, but those things hold so much stuff, and they fold flat. They're just amazing in a dorm room. You can carry so much, and then they just fold up, and they don't have, a big tub or tote that they need to store somewhere in their room. So those are your very best friend. Very
Yeah,
best
for
friend.
sure. And Amazon is
Mm-hmm.
your best friend. Like, I mean, I like the time from like when your Will went to
Mm-hmm.
college to like my Jake went to
Mm-hmm.
college, like that was Amazon, like, Auburn, so far we just shipped stuff via,
Yeah.
Amazon, so we didn't have to take it with us. And that was super
Yeah.
helpful. And you couldn't even like with
Exactly.
Sarah, oh no, with the Abby, well, Abby and Sarah, you flew, right? With both of them when you
We
moved them?
flew. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can even check those bags. They can serve as checked luggage on a plane. So I'm a
Oh,
huge
that's
fan of
awesome.
those bags. But I think you're right. Like I over prepared with all of my kids because none of them had a car freshman year. And, you just didn't want them to run out of anything. But by the time Abby went to school, we relied on Prime a lot more. So don't overpack. Like I did that all wrong the first year with Will. But it was just, what we knew. We didn't rely on that like we do today. I think I think too that you and I've kind of talked about this a little. Like one thing that's really a good thing to pack for them is a supply of cold medicine or things that they are going to need should they get sick. Like if they need it and they don't feel like going to get it or they don't have transportation, it's really nice to have Benadryl or you know um, NyQuil or whatever it is, like some kind of over-the-counter cold medicine, and that they can just get and have and keep there, and whether they use it or not, they have it.
Yes, that is so helpful because they don't know
Mhm.
what to go get and
They
they get
don't
a little
know what to
overwhelmed.
buy. Yeah, and they
So
feel
true.
bad, and so you and I have done that too, where we've sent them little care packages, like or delivery from Grubhub or Uber Eats. They'll deliver anything, so that's wonderful. That's a good thing to know, right? What are some packing tips you think of?
So packing tips, I wasn't as good and organized as you are. So a lot of things we were ordering last minute, Amazon, because your
Hmm.
local Target, Walmart, big stores are going to be
Oh,
pretty wiped out in the towns that you're in.
exactly.
So you kind of have to bring stuff or have like ordered it, have it delivered, or
Hmm.
just know that you may have to, the room may not be totally perfect when you get there. I wish I
Right.
had girls because the dorm rooms were so much cuter than boys. I mean, boys, they just need a blanket and sheets and towels and they're pretty good, right? I mean, it's just pretty simple
Hmm.
for boys. So that's a really helpful thing. One other like last tip that I have is I would highly suggest to join a mom's group of the university or college your kid is going to. If you don't have one, I actually created one, Baylor Moms one, when my son went to Baylor, just for moms for just specifically that grade, so a year, so class of
Hmm.
2024 or 2022 or whatever it was, I can't remember, 22, class of 2022,
Hmm.
moms, and it was just the moms in that grade. That was so fun because
Hmm.
I learned a ton. I could ask questions like, what doctor should I send them to? There was a lot of questions that we could ask each other, and we just kind of went through like this small t trauma together, of like leaving our kids, and it was so helpful. And these are ladies that I'm still friends with today because I developed those relationships. So if your university doesn't have something like that, create one. It's been a great tool for me.
Hmm.
And in fact, I liked it so much. Actually, Dallas has my youngest went to Auburn, and Auburn, Dallas, Fort Worth area has an Auburn Moms group, and that has been just invaluable. And so that group, we get together 4 times a year and do packing parties. So we do little care packages for
So
them, and
fun.
that is so,
Hmm.
so, so fun. And it also helps me meet other moms, and it helps that transition, makes it so much easier, especially when your kids are 11 hours away. You have that instant bond and, that resource as well.
Hmm.
So those are some tips that we have really quickly to kind of share with you. Thank you, Meredith, for sharing
Yep.
your tips, and hopefully this is helpful for our listeners. And continue to read the emails that we have. We're going to send you 10 tips of things that you should teach your kids before they go to college. You have the college packing list. We want to make sure that you're ready, ready, ready when those kids go off to college, and you're prepared for what is beyond, because there is life after and exciting things in your life. It can be amazing. We want to help prepare you to make that transition really great.